We're back on the 1811's steering gear rebuild, and we've run into a little bit of an issue. And I'm not sure if this issue is a common issue, because I haven't rebuilt a ton of these, but what we're running into is that we've got some runout on the shaft itself. So what happens is when I go to tighten the adjustment down here to set the preload on the bearings here, we start to see this up here. So I've got the top bushing removed. Now look at this. Look at the runout on that dude. So after I started to tighten them down, I thought, well, what is going on here? Why do we have all this runout? That's just, was it like that before? Did I do something wrong? So what I did is I took the new bearings and cages out and compared them. I thought, well, maybe maybe there's a difference between the new bearings and races as opposed to the new ones, or as opposed to the old ones. And there is a difference. So right now what's in it are the old bearing cages with new ball bearings in there. And this action here is a lot less, has a lot less friction than if we use these guys. So I'm going to show you and pull this back out. Sorry about that. I'm going to pull this back out and I'll show you why these bearings seem to have a little less of a problem with that. Let me grab a screwdriver. And like I said, I don't know if this is a problem that's always existed with this guy or not. But I can tell you it's not good. And it shouldn't be that there's that much run out. And after inspecting the old bearing races, you can actually see, and I'm pretty confident that this problem has basically always been there. You can see a witness mark on the old races where there's more pressure on one side than the other. So here's a new race. That's a new bearing race. And new bearings. And do you see how much thicker the contact patch is here as opposed to that contact patch at the top? See how that's at the bottom of this race, it's like a thick line and then it's a thin line at the top. So what's happening is the pressure from that runout is pushing the bearings harder on this part of the revolution and less hard at the top. So we're seeing that the indication of that runout there in the new race. Let's pull this out. Be careful. The old cage doesn't hold the bearings as well as the new cages do, but everybody's cleaned up and they got new grease in there. And there is grease on this guy and he's doing his thing. But the difference between the two this is an unedited video with a lot of action, so sorry about the moving the camera around and stuff. So here is the original cage and bearings, and this is the new one. So the difference between these two is that these new ones fit tighter to the OD of the shaft in here. So this ID that grabs the OD of the shaft is tighter than these. And what happens is when that runout occurs and that shaft is moving inside these bearings, these here, they basically snap on there and there is no side-to-side movement at all, really. There's maybe a tiny little bit. But basically, I can't move that bearing back and forth on that shaft at all. It's pretty much grabbed the OD of that shaft, and it's going to do what it's going to do. these, I'm going to be careful with them. When these lay on the shaft, see this? Yeah, there's a little bit of play in there. So that helps create less tension and allows that shaft to kind of float. It allows the run out of that shaft to kind of float in those bearings there. So I wanted to put brand new cage and bearings in, but I think I'm just going to reuse this cage and just use new ball bearings. That's the gist. Okay, so just something to be mindful of. There might be some run out on yours. I don't know. I don't think this is probably correct or proper, but it is what it is. So let's go ahead and slide this guy back in. I don't want to lose the bearings, so. Okay, he's back in his home. He's not going to fall out of there. The other thing that we were going to do was install a bearing at the top of the shaft to decrease the amount of friction up here around the shaft. But with the run out in the shaft that you saw, when it grabs this bearing, it grabs it tight when it pushes against the wall of the bearing. So we're not going to do that. We're going to put on this particular assembly, we're going to put the bushing back in because it's actually smoother and has less friction here with the bushing in. So we're going to change that as well. And the very last thing that I wanted to show you was we cleaned up that area here where there had been a groove in this plate where the bushing had moved. And you can see right here, I pushed that bushing back into its bore and then staked it in place so it can't come back out, and then filed this down so it's not going to touch anything there. And lastly, the seal. So I don't want to wait for a seal to arrive. I just want to get this thing put back together. So what I did is I made a double O-ring seal here, and we're going to see how that works. It's not as wide as the original seal, obviously. I can't get a third one in there, I don't think, without it just trying to flip over the edge. The inside one grabs real nice. But once you start putting O-rings around O-rings, they just kind of want to fold over each other. So we're going to use this guy here. And I've tested the fitment of the steering gear with it assembled, and we get just a little bit of rub on this surface here, compresses this just a little bit. So I think that's right. So that's where we're at. We had to backtrack basically and do some things differently than we had preferred to do. But I wanted to show you where we were, and I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this guy, and then the next video will just be showing the final assembly and adjustment and all that kind of stuff. So there you go.